A man named Paul is out swimming in the ocean near his home. A completely normal morning routine. But out in the water, a strange funnel appears in the sky above him. And beneath him, without Paul noticing, bubbles begin forming a perfect circle around his body. Then they disappear. Just like that. No trace. Paul swims back to shore and goes on with his day, completely unaware that something just changed everything. Paul runs a shipbuilding company. He has a wife named Elise, a young daughter named Mia, and by all appearances, a good life. The business is under pressure. A critical order needs to come through or the whole operation is at risk. But at home, things are warm. The family eats together, dances together, and at the end of the night, Mia goes to bed and Paul and Elise have the house to themselves. It's an ordinary life. For now. A few days later, Paul steps out of the shower and something feels off. The shower head looks higher than it should. He goes to put on a shirt and it hangs loose on his frame. He switches to another one and doesn't think much of it. But then at work, his helmet sits differently on his head. And the nagging feeling won't go away. He goes to a doctor. The results are straightforward and alarming. Paul is now 176 centimeters tall. He has been 180 his entire adult life. The doctor brushes it off as age-related compression and stress. Paul pushes back hard. 4 centimeters is not a normal variation. The doctor doesn't budge. Paul leaves with no answers and a head full of dread. He starts working out at night instead of sleeping. If his body is changing, he's going to fight it. By May 20th, the changes are impossible to ignore. The shower head is now visibly far above him. His wedding ring slides straight off his finger. He stands next to Elise and realizes she is now taller than he is. They rush to the hospital together. Doctors run every test they can find. Every result comes back clean. Paul is perfectly healthy by every measure. His body is simply smaller, proportionally, uniformly, and without explanation. Paul walks out of the hospital without being discharged. He is done being poked at with no answers. The shrinking doesn't stop. By late June, Paul is roughly 40 centimeters tall. Elise has to put their cat Tofu outside permanently because Paul is now the same size as the animal and a potential target. One afternoon, Elise leaves Paul home alone and a realtor arrives to show the house to buyers. Paul has to sprint across the floor and hide under a bed while strangers walk through his own home. Hiding there, he hears the realtor explain that the owner is selling because her husband has disappeared and there are too many memories. When Elise comes home, Paul confronts her. She is selling the house and didn't tell him. Elise explains that he refuses medical treatment, he can no longer work, the mortgage isn't being paid, and she has no other option. Paul refuses to accept being treated like a patient. The argument goes nowhere. Neither of them has a solution. By July 5th, Mia sets up a dollhouse for her father to live in. It gives him walls, furniture scaled to his size, and some sense of safety. Paul tries to keep things light with his daughter, dancing around with one of her dolls just to make her laugh. But when Mia playfully growls at him, the way he used to growl at her, the sound hits his tiny eardrums like a shockwave. Mia immediately feels terrible. At night, Paul climbs into the bed with Elise by pulling himself up her hand. A hand that now feels enormous to him. A few days later, Paul fashions a miniature rope and hook from fishing tackle to help himself get around the house. Then Tofu gets back inside through a small gap in the door. Paul tries to move away from the animal but catches his hook on something and slices himself open. He pulls off his bloody shirt, grabs a sewing needle to use as a weapon, and makes for the dollhouse. Tofu keeps coming. Paul has no choice but to dive through a crack at the bottom of the basement door. He tumbles down the stairs and lands hard inside a trash bin in the basement. When Elise gets home and finds the bloody shirt, she searches the house calling for Paul. She comes down to the basement. Paul screams for her from inside the bin. She can't hear him. Then Tofu appears and Elise draws the worst possible conclusion, that the cat got to Paul. She goes back upstairs, devastated. Paul is left alone in the dark. He spends the whole night in the bin. The next morning, Paul pulls himself together. He makes new clothes from scraps, climbs out of the bin, and starts assessing the basement. He finds the needle that fell with him and keeps it as his weapon. The basement is now an enormous landscape. Shelving units like buildings, boxes like warehouses, every surface a different kind of obstacle. He locates the leaking boiler and uses it for water. He hears Mia upstairs asking to go down to look for him. Elise stops her. Paul finds a piece of white chalk and writes his name in large letters on the basement floor. It's a good plan. But nobody comes downstairs. Hunger sets in. Paul finds a mousetrap baited with cheese and a colony of ants already working on it. He drives them off with the needle, then drops a nail on the trap spring to trigger it safely. He eats the cheese. Then a spider drops from above and starts circling him. Paul makes enough noise to drive it back. He locates a cardboard box near the aquarium and works on punching through it. Using the nail, a strip of rag, and a bottle cap filled with water to slowly soak and weaken the cardboard. Takes a long time, but he gets through. Inside he finds a box of matches, though a heavy book is blocking his path to them and he doesn't have the strength to move it. He barricades himself in the box and sleeps there. On July 15th, Paul tries again to signal Elise, banging a nail and a paper clip together overhead. Nothing. Then he catches pieces of a phone conversation she's having upstairs. The house has already been sold. They are moving out soon. Paul processes this and then walks to the wine cellar. He punches a hole through a cork with his needle and fills a thimble with dripping wine. He drinks it. It immediately makes him sick and he vomits. Then he looks up and sees the spider again, except now it is bigger than him. Significantly bigger. Paul climbs up to the top of the aquarium with his needle and calls the spider toward him. The spider lunges and knocks Paul into the water. He goes under, but he used to dive in the ocean and the muscle memory kicks in. He steadies himself underwater, watches the goldfish moving past him, and finds a strange moment of calm. He climbs back out, dumps the fish food into the tank, and heads back to his shelter. The spider is waiting in the dark. Charges. Paul runs. Gets pinned against a wall. At the last second he grabs a wooden splinter off the ground and drives it straight into one of the spider's eyes. The spider pulls back. Paul shouts at it and it retreats completely. Paul gets the matches. He starts a small fire and sits beside the flame with a tin soldier he found, one of Mia's toys. He talks to it quietly, tells it he misses his daughter, asks it to pass along the message that he is alive and still fighting. By July 20th, Paul is so small that even footsteps shake the ground around him. A man comes down into the basement and the vibrations from his footsteps cause Paul physical pain. When the man leaves, Paul checks on the aquarium. The fish is gone. August 2nd. Paul is now smaller than a mosquito. He watches one fly past him and begins studying the basement window. There is a mosquito net covering it. And he realizes if he can get small enough, he can fit through the mesh and get outside. He starts climbing. Up the wooden leg of the shelving unit, across the stone wall of the basement, moving through gaps between stones that now feel like mountain passes. He reaches the boiler. Nearby, the spider's lair. He tries to go around the web. He walks straight into it. The spider comes. Paul freezes. This thing is now a building-sized monster to him. He can't fight it. He can't run. He waits. And then the spider stops, turns away. Whether it can't see him properly due to the damaged eye or for some other reason, it retreats. Paul stays still until it's gone. He reaches the window. He's still too large to fit through the net. He waits. Through the night and into the morning of August 7th, he waits. An ant wakes him by walking across his leg. He checks the mesh, tries the gap, and this time he fits. Paul crawls through the net and steps outside. The open air. Actual ground. A drop of water nearby. A white butterfly drifting past. Paul stands in the middle of it and narrates to himself. He has left the cage. He is no longer afraid. Whatever happens next, he made it out. The film closes on Paul looking up at the night sky, thinking about Mia. And somewhere else, Mia is outside looking up at the same stars. That's the shrinking man. What would you have done in Paul's position, fight or give up? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe and hit the bell for more recaps just like this one. See you in the next one.